Are you
Get out of the road, you hippie.
I was just about to ask. Yes, hello and welcome back to the Septic Shock Road Trip. It's me, Clive Davis, and him,
Ron Scott, hello.
On our state-by-state road trip across the United States by horror film or horror films. And so I made a slight geographical error.
Uh-oh.
Well, not too bad, but basically we're kind of, for the first half of this episode, today is a double bill. It's a Last House double bill. Sorry, just to clarify for anyone who hasn't watched before as well, we're specifically kind of looking at the golden age, 60s, 70s, 80s regional horror as opposed to, big, studio horror films. This is a bit more, we're trying to be localized, right? That's the idea.
Right. So set and shot in this particular location.
Yes. As to the best of our abilities.
Right, as much as we can. Yeah. So the original idea was
guidelines.
Well, originally we were going state by state, but now it seems that we're going like town by town now. So I don't know what's happening.
There's so much to choose from, and we're enjoying ourselves so much.
Right.
And we're independently wealthy, so we don't have to go back to our day jobs.
Yeah.
We're just
Yeah.
enjoying our bromance on the road here. So we're so I thought we were going, we were leaving Connecticut and we were entering the New York phase of our journey. And this episode, in fact, this episode and the next one is devoted to upstate New York, just a kind of as a blanket. Upstate New York before we get into the city and beyond. But turns out that we're kind of still stuck in Connecticut a little bit for this first film. Which I always, I thought it was more of an upstate New York film. They do go to New York briefly, so fuck it, we're using it because I've always wanted to talk about this film with you, Ron.
Oh, okay.
I'm not quite sure why, but since the beginning of doing our other podcast, Magic Morningwood, available at all great podcast providers, specifically Podbean, I've always wanted to talk about this film with you, and I've been looking for an opportunity to get it into the show. I'm not quite sure why, but I thought it would be an interesting topic of discussion with you, and I guess we're going to find out now if that's true or not. So the film under discussion for the first part of today's double bill is 1972's notorious The Last House on the Left, directed and written by Wes Craven, also the editor, and produced by Sean S. Cunningham, who of course famous later for bringing us the Friday the 13th series as well, and some of those films director. Steve Miner is was like a production assistant on this film as well. So first up, had you ever seen The Last House on the Left before?
Okay, so I have a very short, not so interesting story about this movie.
I love short, not so interesting stories.
So back in Canada, in my formative teenage, early 20s years, I and several of my bunch of my friends, we were sort of into horror movies. Although our tastes were sort of mainstream, we watched a lot of the mainstream movies, but a lot of stuff was not always available to us. Like we didn't really have a lot of independence movies. We would have to go to Blockbuster, for example, and we whatever was available we could see. Stuff that was on cable television wasn't a lot of like independent stuff. So a lot of movies were not really that available, or even, and we weren't like reading books or magazines about this stuff. So we were just sort of like discovering it as we discovered, right? So some of our, and a lot of the times we didn't have a lot of patience for stuff that wasn't that that good. Sometimes we found some gems, like we found like Basket Case or Evil Dead. You know, those were sort of like, we thought we were so special because we found these like little things, which of course for people like yourselves, we're just sort of like, well, of course everybody knows those movies, right? So, but we were sort of like less privileged in terms of being able to find independent or like off the beaten track kind of movies.
Right. But it's still, I mean, as long as you felt that they were your films, I mean, that's all
right.
counts, really,
exactly, right? So
experience.
So one day, my friend Mark came to us and he says, "Guys, I have this great movie. I've got this copy of this movie. It's called Last House on the Left." And he said, I've heard so much about this movie. It's really like, everyone knows about this movie. Apparently, it's really, really, really gruesome and gory. Everyone, it's just, apparently it's a really, really famous movie. We're all like, oh, really? I've never heard of it. Let's, so we're in my basement. We popped it into the VHS. We're like, okay, let's watch this movie. Let's see what this is all about. We walked around and we made it about 30 minutes into the movie before we were all bored to tears. We were all so bored, and we were like, "What is this movie?" And I remember we actually fast forwarded through the movie, just hoping that we could find something that was more interesting than the first 30 minutes or so. And we, kept fast forwarding. Oh, okay, there's a little bit here. Okay, oh, there's chainsaw. Okay, and then it was over, and that was it. So we never really watched the movie. We sort of watched the first.
Philistines.
Yes. So that was because we were and then after that, Last House on the Left became almost a joke amongst my group for movies that Mark thought were really good, and then he was sort of like, oh, sorry. He was sort of like his emblem of shame that he brought this movie to us, and we were like, oh, we couldn't, and that it was so boring and we couldn't even make it through. So that was my going into watching it this time was oh no, not Last House on the Left. We couldn't even make it through it the first time. Of course, you have forced me to watch a lot worse movies than this one, a lot more boring movies than this one. So I think my tolerance has certainly increased. So I was able to actually watch the whole thing this time. So
in the interim between you having seen Last House on the Left and it becoming this kind of totem of boring films which you made fun of your friend about, and then seeing it this time, were you aware of the notoriety of it?
Yes, I was, and we were still, and I think all of my friends are still kind of like, what? Why this movie? I couldn't, kind of scratching our heads about it. And it was always sort of in the back of my mind as something that probably I should revisit, because I feel like maybe the way we watched it was not the best way or something like that. But it was always just sort of like, oh, do I really want to watch that again? And especially considering like our reaction to it the first time, and I sort of chalked it up to movies that were, notorious at the time, but don't hold up, I assume.
Right. So hadn't dated well. Yeah.
Hadn't dated well, right?
So I'll just jump into a very quick plot synopsis of what it is about, and then I'll tell you about my first experience with it as well. Then, and then
sure,
kind of go from there. So it's quite simple. There's an opening. It's called "The Events You're About to See Are True," which I mean, they're not. Although they're I suppose it's kind of like both films we're going to talk about. Very heavily Manson inspired,
right?
But basically, there's a couple of girls. Why have I not written their names down here? Oh yeah. So you got Sandra Peabody under the name Sandra Cassell. She's like the main. It's her 17th birthday, and she lives in, well, it turns out to be Connecticut, but I think it's kind of supposed to be. I don't know, how long does it take to drive from Connecticut to Manhattan? I'm not quite sure. Does it take a while? Because they drive there, right? Her and her friend.
We just drove there. So how long did it take us? It took us about two weeks, right? So.
Yes, her friend, played by Lucy Grantham, and it's her 17th birthday, so they're going to drive into the city to see the band Bloodlust, who are known for slaughtering chickens on stage or something like that, right? Yes, and so off they go, and when they arrive in the city, they decide, oh, maybe we should score some grass before the show. That would be a good idea. And they make the mistake of asking Mark Scheffler, who is one of a kind of a quartet of convicts on the run, basically, right? The main
I mean, they have like the news report beforehand to explain who they are, and it sounds like only the two of them are on the run, and they've hooked up with the other two, right?
Yeah. So David Hess is the main Krug, and Mark Scheffler is his son, who he's deliberately heroin.
I think it's his son-in-law or his. It's not his actual son. It's
like an adopted son.
It's his girlfriend's son or something like that, right? So.
And then you got Fred Lincoln as Weasel. He's the other guy who's broken out with Krug.
Right.
And also Jeremy Rain is kind of like their Dyke Mall kind of type, right? But basically they're bad news. And they're hanging out, and these two girls, one who's kind of painted as, very innocent and virginal, the other one a bit more streetwise and
wild,
yeah. And they end up in the clutches of these two guys, this group, and not quite sure what happens to them in that apartment, because we quickly kind of move forward to the next day, right? And they decide to get out of Dodge, and they chuck them both in the trunk of the car, and they drive upstate, and coincidentally the car breaks down.
Well, it sort of implies, or I can't remember if it implied or it said directly that the one girl, the Wilder girl, was raped,
right?
But the other one was not. So you don't really know what's happened yet.
Right. Anyway, en route to wherever they're going to get out of Dodge, their car breaks down. Happens to break down near the house of Sandra Peabody's parents, who are very worried because their little girl's been out all night. And then, and we'll get more, because I think we have a lot to talk about the bizarre tonal shifts in this film. But the girls, the gang take the girls out into the woods for sexual humiliation.
Well, no. First the car breaks down, right?
Yeah, that's what I said. The car breaks down.
Oh, okay, yeah. It's not that they just And it happens, but it breaks down like at the end of her driveway.
Yes, pretty much.
And in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. So then they have their fun with the girls, and rape and murder ensues. Blah 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 blah, and it's all kind of quite nasty. And then they seek refuge. The gang they go and stay with the family. Right? They're like, our car broke down, and they end up. This couple very kindly put them up for the night and feed them.
They become a B&B.
Yes, they have a room and food and everything, and
eggs and bacon in the morning. Okay. Yes.
And then while they're there, they kind of discover little clues. They discover the truth, bloody clothes and bits of jewelry or something like that. They figure out that. And
also over here is Junior saying, or one in the other room saying like, we killed their daughter and it's in their Linda Lake.
Yeah. So then they figure out, hang on now, and they run out and they discover the body. Well, it's supposed to be the corpse of their daughter, but she's clearly still alive in one of the weirdest continuity errors. And then they exact their revenge with chainsaws and booby shots.
Was she alive at the end of it, or
no, she's supposed to be dead? They say
she's supposed to be dead.
Right? Like
but then did they drag her body? Like suddenly she was like on the couch, but it was like they just dragged the body out of the lake and then put her on the couch. Right?
She's supposed to be I don't even know how the body got from the lake.
Yeah, it never I thought I missed something because I was like, wait a second, how did the body end up on the sofa?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of.
They wanted to go over there, and they're like, no, don't go over there, as if to like say like the body's been there, but
right,
because you see them running down to the lake after they figure it out that it's them.
Yeah,
well, no, they overhear them saying.
Yeah, no, they actually find the body.
The body, yeah.
Except the body's moving and has their eyes open, but they're like weeping over it and going, she's dead.
Yeah. Well, then there was like the cut off arm that they bring out that was still moving. The fingers were still moving. You remember that one?
yeah. There's a lot of problems here. Well, a lot beyond that, but yeah. So basically, it's a remake of Ingmar Bergman's The Virgin Spring, right? Which itself is based on like a medieval ballad. Apparently, I was looking it up. There's like a variation of it across Scandinavia. There's different versions, one for Norway, one for Denmark, one for Sweden. But yeah, it's the original rape revenge story,
right? Yeah.
And yes, so that's that. So yes, so notorious, I suppose, for it came out in 1972, so it was pretty strong meat for 1972. It was very, very often censored. Not some, I mean, it is kind of gory, I guess, but I think more than, it's not as if there's buckets of gore, especially as you and your bored, jaded friends in the early 90s, I'm guessing.
Mid 90s, yeah.
Yeah. It's post Brain Dead or something like that. It's not really.
Yeah. I think we had found Brain Dead, and then was like, after this one was sort of like.
But it's nasty, isn't it? I think that's the thing, is it's nasty,
right.
And there's extended kind of humiliation scenes and and plus as well, we'll get into this more later as well. If you listen to the commentaries or you look up the film, you find that there was a lot of on-set abuse that certainly wouldn't be accepted
today. Yes.
And it's amazing actually how times have changed in a very short period of time, because even the making of documentaries from not that long ago, there's people pretty much joking about the abuse of this film.
Right.
And you're thinking, they probably wouldn't be joking about it now. It wouldn't fly at all, right?
Right. Yeah.
But so this was another film that ended up on the Video Nasties list in the UK. I don't think it was legally available until 2008.
Yes, I read that. Yeah. 2008. I mean, that's
not even
crazy.
a cut version or anything. I don't think it was one of those films that was just, nope, we're not having this. It's it's just a nasty, grubby kind of piece of. And we'll get to opinions and stuff, whatever, later. But I think that's kind of undeniable. It is nasty and grubby, right? It does have it's not a pleasant film.
No.
So obviously I first saw this as well on a bootleg video cassette. Very, very shitty quality, if memory serves. It wasn't a particularly good quality version. I don't know where it would have come from, but I think Last on the House on the Left, even though it had censorship problems in North America, I think it was still readily available on video and stuff, though,
right?
Although until the recent DVDs and Blu-rays, definitive cuts and stuff, it seems to have existed in slightly different versions, like some bits of this cut out, some bits of that cut out,
right?
And Wes Craven talks about, like, originally when they would send it off, for theatrical distribution, apparently Prince would come back with like bits missing that cut out of it and stuff. And
and apparently like projectionists would make copies of it, and then apparently the people, like, there was like stories about people like wanting to bomb the theater because it was too violent, which is pretty funny. And then like people would like try to get copies of it and then like smash up or like cut up the prints and stuff. And
so it's really kind of it's got this whole mythology that goes along with it, right? So I first saw this maybe around the same time you would have. Then I think I would have seen it in the mid to late 90s on a bootleg video cassette, and primed to see it because number one, it was on the Video Nazis list, and also I've heard all about it, and so it was real forbidden fruit. And Darren would have seen it as well. I think he might have bought it, the bootleg, and then lent it to me, and I think we both were very underwhelmed, not as bored as you and your friends weren't necessarily, but just it just seemed so silly. Like the comedy and stuff was
yes.
just like,
yeah, like the deputies and stuff. Like it's really broad.
Yeah,
over the top, like humor and
it just seemed like a shoddy piece of work. It seemed like a very shoddily put together film.
I think that the notoriety that goes with this movie is totally unaccounted for. It's really unnecessary. Like it's really it's not. Yeah, it's a nasty little work, I guess, and that it feels nasty and grubby, whatever. But at the same time, the notoriety that goes along with it is questionable, I think. So.
Well, I think it's like you said, it's very difficult to fathom now. I mean, even 25 years ago, it was difficult to fathom, right? Like, that shock value seems to have, I don't know. I mean, it does still have a shock value. But there were other films around the same time that also, were kind of nasty and grubby. And
right.
It wasn't uniquely kind of nasty and grubby in that way, or the rape revenge thing. It's just, it's difficult to put your finger. There's something about it. There is something about it which does seem like they've gone one step too far. But then it's so diluted by all this, like the woman driving the truck for chickens.
Ada Washington.
Yes, it's just like what the hell. And if I was watching a Hong Kong film, I'd kind of expect it to a certain extent, but you don't expect it of American cinema of this era necessarily. And I don't know if you had a chance to listen to any of the commentary tracks or whatever.
I didn't know.
And whereas Clive and Ron is kind of kind of say, well, that's how violence is in real life. It just kind of comes out of nowhere, and I'm just like, no. I'm not buying your retroactively put on this film thesis. I think it's just a very shoddily, badly thought out, ill-judged, put together little film, right? Pretty much. I mean,
at least I'm glad that you think that it wasn't just me. Like and even when I was done, I couldn't understand. Like, is this actually a good movie? Am I missing something? Like, is all the fame that it has, like the infamy that it is associated with it. I was like, am I missing something? Like, I just didn't really get it. It was. I mean, there were points that was kind of like, even some of the comedy was kind of like, ha, 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 that's kind of funny, good, broad, slapsticky humor. But at the same time, I was sort of like, I just didn't really get it. I didn't really get.
No, I agree. I don't think it is a good film, but that's not to say I don't appreciate it. I mean, I've seen this film a few times now, and I've noticed it has grown on me a little bit the more I watched it. Because I suppose I was trying to put it into context, and I was thinking, well, I like I said, I do for whatever reason, I do accept these wild tonal shifts in cinema of other countries. So why wouldn't well, for one reason, it's not well done, right? Like it's a bit,
right.
And it's not as if the comedy's. I mean, it's real level of like it's like, what the fuck is this?
It's almost like you almost expect it to be sped up a little bit to like that, like the Keystone Cops, Hill, like running around, the kind of stuff. Like it's that level,
and it's
right?
intercut as well, like the parents like preparing, and then you're back to the rapist.
Then you've got the parents doing Home Alone.
Yeah. Well, that's why I don't have a problem so much with that latter, but like the early stages where this flipping through, and some of the dialogue like really bad as well, like when she makes the cake or something, and he has a line. What does he say? Is it? I should have written it down. It says something. He says something like people would never say. Like, it's an incredible achievement or something like that. Like it's like this.
Well,
very weird dialogue.
I mean, what I learned about this movie, after watching it, looking it up and watching the documentary and stuff like that, the making of, I guess. So originally, what I didn't know, which kind of makes sense now, was that it was intended to be a hardcore porn film originally.
Yes.
So now that adds a whole element to it that I didn't know before, which probably makes a little more sense now in terms of the bad dialogue and the pretty bad acting and some of that, which is that it was meant to be a totally different film. And then they got together and all the actors and actresses were ready to do hardcore, and including some of them being hardcore actors.
Well, Fred Lincoln
Fred Lincoln
is a long time, proper insider porno guy.
Looks like Richard Towers did some too, maybe possibly. So,
yes, or as we're calling him in this film, Gaylord St. James.
St. James, what a name!
Yeah, I don't know if he was. He's in a few. I've seen him in a few nudie films. I don't know if you went.
Okay. Okay. But anyway, so then they, and then so that sort of accounts for why the dialogue is so bad, right? And also, so they were all ready to do it, and then they got together and decided, you know what, we don't need to do the sex. Let's just do it on the violence, right? So
I don't know how far along they got with that idea. I mean, certainly no one would be more happy than me if Sandra Peabody had done hardcore. I mean, she's.
But then, by all accounts, it sounds like she was. I mean, you were talking about all the abuse on the set, and it seems that Sandra Peabody was very, kind of conservative and really uncomfortable with the whole, the abuse. Yeah. Like they were like.
Sure she would have agreed to the.
But it's just like I feel it's strange that she had agreed to do a hardcore porn movie, which is basically what it was. It said that all of the actors were there ready to do hardcore porn, and they decided not to sort of at the last minute. Which is also interesting that Wes Craven, his first movie was meant to be a porn movie, right?
I thought it was. He had edited porn before that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And plus, as well, I think the one thing we're overlooking is you have to put yourself back in the mindset of the counterculture of the late 70s, early 70s. I think the thing late 60s, early 70s. I think the thing that we forget now, that is not really conceivable to us now, is back in those days, it was part of the revolution, wasn't it? Like,
right.
It was like, yeah, man, let your inhibitions go. And, I think it was very much even someone, who was very conservative, as Susan Peabody might have been, Sandra Peabody, sorry. I mean, it would have been part of the process of becoming less conservative, and it would have been the cool thing to do, right? To break your boundaries and do this kind of thing. So I can see how she might have, on a theoretical level, thought, yeah, I should probably do that and break down my inhibitions. But then again, there's a difference between a more kind of romantic fuck film and a kind of rape revenge running through woods naked and stuff like, being roughed up, especially if, as apparently they've fessed up to the whole, well, especially David Hess and Fred and Mark Scheffler as well were kind of method about it, right? Like
yes, that's the thing, right?
It would have been very nice to Sandra Peabody,
right? But it sounds like also that Fred Lincoln hated this movie. Like he was like a hardcore porn actor and thought that this was the one movie he was embarrassed about. But that the only thing that he enjoyed, but that apparently he was Lucy Grantham, I think, also did some porn.
Yes,
yeah. And that he and Lucy were just having sex off camera because that was the only thing that made it worthwhile for him. So
I find Fred Lincoln's objections objectionable myself, actually, because he's on.
So did everybody else. I mean, Fred Hess thought he was like a douchebag, right? Because
yeah. Well, the thing is, there is a commentary track now with David Hess and Fred Lincoln and Mark Scheffler together, watching the film back, and that's quite entertaining. I mean, they're quite. They like to needle each other, but they're still kind of friendly. And but I was surprised to find Fred Lincoln on that commentary track because, like you said, he kind of disowned this film for years and years and years. And
so was the commentary track made after that documentary?
Obviously, he's come to terms. I don't know what changed his mind, but in an earlier, I don't know if you watched the documentary I sent you a link to.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
So on there, he says something like, this film, after this film opened, hundreds of women were raped or something like that. He says something like that along those lines.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not. I've seen some of Fred Lincoln. I admit I didn't go through and double check that his entire filmography, but I'm pretty sure if you were working in the 70s as a porn performer and a director, at some point you would have made some rape-themed porn film, right? I mean, there's no doubt that. So that's the thing that always surprised me. Why did he single out this as being the film that would trigger an audience to do things?
Well, then, who was it? David Hess or Wes Craven mentioned that maybe they thought that he got a little bit too into the character and it sort of like scared him, like brought out some things about himself that maybe he was embarrassed or uncomfortable with, so it's possible.
Yeah, well, I mean, he is very convincing as a psychopath.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, he's the most convincing, I think. Yeah, so
yes.
I'd say.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, David Hess became iconic as well after this film. He ended up playing a variation on the Krug character in the whole. And of course, he provides the majority of the soundtrack to the film as well, right?
Yes, which, we have to get to the soundtrack. We definitely need to mention the soundtrack on this movie.
Which is kind of, I mean, just from an objective level, because he was a singer-songwriter, he wrote some songs like Elvis performed and stuff like that. It's like a legit, and they're not bad songs, like they're proper songs. He's a good singer-songwriter. I would say some of these songs, divorced from the film, work pretty well, right?
Decent songs, yeah.
Yes, but yes, I think. Are you
big but?
Are you thinking of the same one? I should have written down the lyric there. Kruger and Weasel and Negative Tom offer that one, right? The one where
I especially, is it the one that has the kazoo at the beginning?
Yes. Yes. And it's the theme of the film as well, right? It's like it's talking about Krug and Weasel and Junior and Sadie and they're having a fun. Yeah, it's like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, I thought when I first saw it, I was like, it was so shocking that I thought that I'd put the wrong audio track on or something, right? I was like, what is happening? It's so out of place and so inappropriate for the tone of this movie.
But the thing about it as well is, like, I think now, if you're talking about this now in retrospect and how we view it, and it is interesting to talk about it because of all this. But I think if anyone's not seen this film, watch it, please, because I think we're making it sound almost as if, isn't this film cleverly subverting what you expect from it? But I don't think it is. It's just badly done, isn't it?
I think it was literally just like, we need some music. You're a musician? Okay, here, write something for it. Write something for the music, and then we'll get it for free because you're in the movie as well, right? After I heard the song, I didn't realize it was David Hess. As soon as the song, I was like, what is this song? And I looked up, I was like, that's the guy who plays Krug. So that it sort of made sense that they were just sort of like free music because he was already in it, right? So,
right.
I almost get the impression that sort of like, he's like, hey, can you write a song for the movie? And he wrote it, and Wes Craven was kind of like, well, that kind of sucks, but let's just put it in there anyway, right? So,
well. That whole sequence as well is like, you got that song, but it's comic relief scene, and Krug is fucking Sadie in the backseat while they're driving, and they're having this inane conversation with Weasel. Is, what do you think the sex crime of the century is? Which was one of the early titles of the film. Sex crime of the century was like a working title or something, and it's just, it's like, I don't buy this thing that they say, we deliberately, we wanted to switch between, to show how violence works in the real world, and it comes out. I don't buy that for a second, because Wes Craven, for example, never made another film in this style again, right? Like,
yes.
He didn't go back to this weird ass style of suddenly jumping from goofy comedy, not funny, just goofy comedy, to shocking violence. So if there is any value in the film at all, and I think there is, to be honest with you, I do find it interesting to watch, it's almost totally accidental.
Right. Also mentioning, like, the comic relief character of there's the two deputies, which are so the two deputy comic reliefs, who are these like bumbling Keystone cops, talking about really random shit and stuff, and then the car breaks down because he forgot to put gas in it, so they've got to walk to the place, and so it's just them walking for hours. I mean, and they don't even arrive till like the next morning or something, or the middle of the night. So it's like you assume that they've been walking for hours and hours and hours and hours trying to get to this place. One of them played by Martin Cove. Martin Cove, who becomes famous for being like the Cobra Kai sensei from Karate Kid, and who has
for the David Hess role apparently
originally for Krug, but turned it down because he didn't want to chainsaw people apparently, but which didn't make any sense because Krug didn't actually use the chainsaw, so I didn't really understand that rationale. But I mean, he decided.
Martin Cove's a big guy as well, right? Which is why
he's very big.
Yeah.
And was friends with David Hess and was the one that recommended David Hess for the part.
And it worked out good for David Hess because David Hess kind of played the Krug role in a whole bunch of, because Last House on the Left led to so many imitations of Last House.
Right.
And he's in a few of those. One quite good one called The House on the Edge of the Park, for example. He's in that one.
Okay.
So he became a bit of a kind of horror. He would turn up at like horror conventions, right?
Conventions and stuff. Yeah. They talked about, and then the documentary about them all being, and then
everyone else is in masks like Freddy, but he's just himself. Freddy
just himself, yeah. And Fred Lincoln would always turn it down because he didn't want to go, but apparently they'd offer it to him too. But and so Martin Cove decided to take the comic character instead, but has absolutely no comic timing whatsoever.
Those two cops, man, they make like the cops in like the Porky's films seem like really smart, don't they?
Right, yeah. I assume below. my guess is that Wes Craven was trying to go for like the Shakespearean kind of like the Gravedigger kind of, the comic relief from the really heavy stuff.
Right.
I think that's what the original idea was, but it was just so strange and out of place, and just the tonal shifts between the two. Like you've got them like raping her in the woods, and then you've got these like let's go guys, right? Like it was
like
very
I said,
strange.
It could be straight out of Hong Kong. In fact, there was a Hong Kong, one of the many rip-offs of this film was a Hong Kong film called The Beasts, which was a rape revenge, father takes revenge, which works a lot better than Last House on the Left, I think, just because it somehow it's a bit more competent. Like they were, I think, in their case, maybe those swing shifts were like a bit more, they had a bit more of a handle on how to do that, or there was a more deliberate kind of, I don't know what the hell they were. Fascinated. I mean, I've listened to 3 different commentary tracks about this film, watched a few documentaries. I still don't really quite understand what they thought they were trying to do, and I don't think they do either. It all seems like in retrospect.
Well, even Wes Craven even admits, he says, I'd never gone to film school. I'd never made a movie. I've never even read a book about how to make a movie. Like he was just like, they didn't know how to do anything. Like Fred Lincoln was the one, he says that I was the one that taught them how to do all the special effects and how to set up a scene and do all stuff, because he was the one who had been on film sets, even though they were porn sets, right? So,
but then again, as much as I enjoy hearing him talk, because he's quite the character and he's he's a smart, interesting guy, I also take almost everything Fred Lincoln says with a pinch of salt. Right? He seems like a slightly self-aggrandizing. Although I do like him as a person, and I like listening to him talk. I've heard him on other things as well, like talking about the porn stuff he did, and he's certainly an interesting he's an interesting dude. And to Wes Craven as well. The other thing that's amazing, I mean, he clearly learned something, because this is his first film as director. He then directs a porno film called The Fireworks Woman, and then his next film after that is The Hills of Eyes, which is just like whoa. Just in the space of 5 years, and I think Hills of Eyes, is his classic, right? I think that is the best film he probably ever made. He made some other interesting ones as well, but to have gone from Last House on the Left to Hills of Eyes, that's pretty fucking impressive. Right. And it's interesting how he takes clearly the booby trap thing is something he's really into, right? Because he did that in The Hills of Eyes, and he did it in A Night on Elm Street as well, right? The whole booby traps obviously mean a lot to Wes Craven. Yeah, so it's, I mean, right. So how was it watching it this time then? Like, obviously you engaged with it a little more this time beyond that was just fucking boring.
Yeah, this time I didn't find it boring so much as confusing, right? So yeah, I was just like, and I couldn't even rectify the movie that I had seen in the late 90s with my friends as being really boring and worthwhile of fast forwarding through versus this one, because I feel like there was a lot of stuff in here that we would have laughed at.
Right.
That we at least would have found amusing and like strange and like, what is this music? Or at least stuff to make fun of. Like we could have at least watched it to make fun of. But like, yeah, I remember we were all just so bored. And yes, it is a bit of a slow burn at the beginning. Not much happens at the beginning, but I was surprised at how what a strong reaction we had to it, which was I think the wrong reaction. It wasn't that it's a boring movie. It's that it's just not a good movie.
Yeah.
Right, so
well, slightly different, but I'm also surprised by how my reaction has changed. I think back in the day, maybe I was so primed to find something strong and shocking, and like I was blinded to maybe its other charms in a way. Because yes, I think this film, no matter what you think about it, it isn't boring because it is like, it's just so strange, and even if you don't like it, it's a bit of a car crash watch, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm glad I finally got to see it, and now I can say that I've actually seen it, and but it wasn't. I don't think I got anything out of it, but I was interested to see, the documentary made it sort of interesting, like put it into like a sort of perspective and the cultural significance of it at the time and the reactions to it. I always find like people's reactions to these movies, like these movies that become like notorious or like, banned or picketed in these types of movies. I always found them really interesting. And usually I find them a little bit underwhelming, but I find it interesting that this whole thing kind of even happens. And the fact that both the Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th and Scream series all came from this sort of, this is like the starting point, right? So it's sort of, so it's like a jumping off point for all the actual more well-known sort of series.
Yes, and I would say as well that even though if I had to program some kind of important milestones of horror cinema, kind of retrospective or something, when I got to this, I would be slightly not sure whether to include it or not, actually, because it is important in a way.
Yeah, it feels like it's an important film in terms of its position in the horror genre, genealogy, but at the same time, it's not a good film by any stretch of the imagination, but it seems to be important for whatever reason, right?
Yes. Like it's not the creme de la creme, but it's somehow it's unavoidable, I think.
Right. Yeah.
So did you see? Yeah. No. So go ahead.
No, it's okay.
I was just going to ask you, did you see the 2008 remake of
That's actually what I was going to ask you.
Oh, okay, okay.
So I didn't know. Did you?
I did see it. And I remember it, kind of being, I mean, similarly, I think it was to the, when the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake came out. I haven't gone back to rewatch it, I have to admit, since it was new, but everyone was down on it, oh no, because you're remaking this classic or whatever. And I was thinking, well, yeah, but that's a slightly unfair comparison, because the original was this groundbreaking. But you can't expect a remake of it to be a groundbreaking classic.
Yes.
But just as a kind of fun retread, Jessica Biel looks great in those denim shorts kind of way. I remember the TCM remake being all right, nothing to get angry about. And last night, the remake struck me as yes, it's not. It can't be the original. You can't do that again. And actually, for what it was, I thought it was okay. Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it.
I mean, to be honest, I generally enjoy most of the remakes of these sort of classics. Like I enjoyed the remake of Texas Chainsaw. I liked the remake of The Evil Dead. I haven't seen the Friday the 13th remake yet, but and I haven't seen and I haven't seen the Nightmare on Elm Street reboot with the different Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, that wasn't very good.
I didn't see that one, but I don't mind these, and I enjoy them because they come with more of like a different centuries aesthetic. You know what I mean? Like it's sort of like and you know, it has more money, it has more it's sort of looks better, and I think that they take the original and can take what you like about the original, but then fix the mistakes as well, right? So, I don't know if it necessarily does that, but it can do that, right?
Yeah, and I don't think it's even about that. I mean, like I said, I think the comparison isn't even necessarily. It's just take it for what it is.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, like I didn't think the Friday the 13th remake, which is kind of actually a remake of 1, 2, and a half of part 3, because it's the hockey mask towards the end.
Right.
Wasn't particularly good, but the thing is, the original Friday the 13th films weren't that good either.
Wasn't good either, right?
It doesn't really upset me, you know. It's just
I'm certainly not a purist about like you have to don't touch it, don't leave it alone, right?
Well,
I'm always interested in a new take on an old thing, right? So, but
Wes Craven himself and his son Jonathan, who is the kid who gets his balloon popped by Krueger,
right?
They were both involved in the Last Another remake, right? So, It comes with their blessing. So yeah, I don't have. There was in between in 2005 there was a film called Chaos, which was pretty much a Last House on the Left remake, an unofficial one, but relocated to the West Coast, with the late Sage, son of Sylvester Stallone, in it.
Oh, okay.
In the role of the son.
Of the son.
Yeah, and in that version, the Krug character is called Chaos now, and it's a low budget kind of West Coast remake, and they try and up the ante with the gore and make it more graphic with the sex, and the ending is even more grim, but it's not particularly good. I wouldn't go out of your way to check it out. Whereas I think Last House on the Left, I think, is probably actually kind of essential if you're a horror film fan, right? If you're interested in where the genres come from and kind of milestones that have changed it, it's kind of an essential watch, really, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So I'm glad I went back and watched it at least anyway. Now I can say that I can say that I've at least seen it. So.
Right. Okay. So with that in mind, then. We can now finally leave Connecticut. See you, Gino. See you, Eric. Bye.
Bye.
Hang on. We just drive across the state line. There we go. So now we are in. Actually, I don't know how far they are, but we are now in upstate New York, specifically Oneonta, New York. And this brings us to our last house. The last house on Dead End Street. First watch for you, Ron?
Yes.
Okay. So this one has a kind of slightly confusing production history. Originally made in the winter of 1972 into 1973. Under the working title of The Cuckoo Clocks of Hell, which I believe is a reference to Kurt Vonnegut.
Okay.
And so the credits are director Victor Janos, writer Brian Lawrence, producer Norman F. Kaiser, but they are all AKAs, as is Steve Morrison, which is his acting name. The man behind all this is one Roger Watkins, who is also our star, who plays our character, Terry Hawkins. And so we should explain that the version of the film we're watching, which is now out, it's the fullest version that's ever been available commercially, 78 minutes long. It's the longest version available. But it is, so he made this film in 72, 73. Apparently, I don't know if did you have a chance to listen to the commentary track, Ron?
I didn't know.
Okay, so quite interesting one. You should probably listen to it at some point. It's actually quite interesting. You know, apart from the film, it's quite interesting to hear how the low budget filmmaking goes sometimes. Seems as if the film was taken away from him at some point.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the distributor recut it, re-edited it, moved things around, added a new awful dub. The voiceover dub is pretty bad.
Right.
I don't know if it was much better in its original form, but it can't be much worse. And then I think maybe released apparently in some southern states in 1977. It then turned up on 42nd Street in New York in 1979, and then kind of disappeared until it came out in the UK on video. There's another film we'll probably get to later in the series when we get to Michigan called Deathbed, which had a weirdly similar distribution route, a film that kind of got taken away from the filmmakers, recut, disappeared, and then ended up on tape in the UK. So that's the version we're talking about. So it's not exactly Roger Watkins's original vision.
Right.
So the plot is kind of quite simple. Basically, this Terry Hawkins character, he's an ex. We got a lot of voiceover, right? He's an ex-con, and he decides to make snuff movies. And he kind of manages to convince like a backer and a distributor and stuff to fund it, I guess. And then he gets himself a skeleton crew, some actors and some filmmakers and stuff. And then he films a bunch of murders for real. And that's kind of it, right? But it's told in a very fragmented, weird, out of
hallucinatory.
Yes.
Yeah.
And things, yeah. So I guess there's no kind of two ways about it. I don't think we can. We just have to jump in with our opinions and then kind of go from there. How did this film strike you, Ron?
So Last House on the Left, I said that when we watched it, we found it really, really boring and fast forwarded to it. This was more of that film for me. It was so boring.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I was so bored with this whole movie. Yeah, I don't know. It was just a grind. Even only 87 minutes, it was just a grind for me. So, yeah.
This one, 78. This one didn't.
78, sorry.
This one didn't work its magic on you then.
No, it was very, it was a bit of a slog to get through it for me. So, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, go ahead. I'll jump in.
I mean, I have a slight more. I'm not just me. So this film's kind of gone through a weird, interesting kind of. I enjoy the film more than you do, I think. But I think to your point that I think it's the. What's the correct word? It's like it's the theology or something of this film that's more interesting than the actual film itself.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think probably if the more you know about the history or like this, like the cultural significance or the historical place of it, it probably becomes more interesting. But the movie itself is not that interesting.
But I think it's the enigma of it as well, which isn't there anymore because now you have this nice cleaned up Blu-ray version with the commentary track with the filmmaker explaining exactly what happened.
Right. But I guess at the time they didn't know. They thought maybe it really was a snuff film because they didn't know who made it, and it was all pseudonyms taking credit for it. So yeah, I get that. It was kind of like the Blair Witch Project of these early 70s, right? So
right, and it turns up in that Killing for Culture book which I lent you. Right, it's a very important part of that book, because not only because it's, you know, it's about the making of snuff films as well, but I think it comes in that kind of weird period. We talked about it with Last House on the Left a little bit. It's very post Manson, isn't it? Like the gang scene. Terry Hawkins is there, Charles Manson, but with a video camera.
Right.
And that feeds into, there was this urban legend for years and years and years. The Manson family did film some killings, and someone even made a film called Manson Family Movies, which was like a imagining of, well, what if the Manson family had made films? This is what they would look like. And then there's that film that came out, Snuff, you know, which was the film with the fake snuff footage attached to the end of it, and that original film is basically in its original form is a retelling of the Charles Manson. So there's this whole Manson snuff connection thing. Right. So if you're interested in, if you've always been interested in that kind of urban legend, that gives it a kind of layer as well. Right. And then so like I said, this turned up, and like David Carrascus, who read Khalifa Culture, I'm sure he would have rented it, you know, in the early 80s on video as a younger man, took it home and what the fuck is this strange beast, and not seeing it, you know, in HD as well, the murkiness makes it more kind of impenetrable, and not necessarily that you might think it's a real stuff film, but you do kind of wonder what's going on here, like who made this, who is this Janos, who doesn't have any other credits. Right. And I like it a bit more than you do, because I think the ineptitude, the mixture of ineptitude, and I think Roger Watkins did have talent. I think he's dead now, but I think he was aiming for a certain aesthetic which was deliberate, but then combined with the kind of ineptness and stuff, it makes this film slightly hallucinatory, and like a bad dream, or like a bad and
all of like a lot of like the dialogue is like set into like this sort of like sounds like it's set into like a metal grate that makes it everything go like sort of an echoey kind of thing, but it's like a low budget echoey, like, you know, like sound recording kind of effect kind of thing, right? So
yes, and it gives everything a kind of it reminds me a little bit of there was a funny, I can't remember what it was, some sketch show once, they had The Edge from U2 unplugged, right? And then like they had to come out and they took out all his pedals and effects and everything else. And then when you take that all away, the Edge is just going broom, 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 broom. Like he's a very boring guitar player who doesn't have any technique at all, right? Just,
right.
Yeah. So I think it's that kind of film that almost benefits from, and then interestingly, when Roger Watkins talks about this film, he's kind of quite embarrassed by its cult status, because it's like, well, this isn't the film I intended. Not only was it taken away from me, but also, you know, it wasn't quite what I want. Some of it he's proud of, but some of it was like the cult following is kind of, you know, kind of goes over his head a little bit. It's like, why do people like this? Like, this is this rubbish. Like, this is not what I intended necessarily. So it's interesting from that point of view, in terms of like how much audience brings to its film.
Right. Yeah. Also, I thought there was some really interesting some of the special effects, considering the low budget nature of it, was pretty, like the whole bit with like the woman strapped down and then the cutting off her legs and stuff. Like it looked very deep. I mean, I can see why people maybe have thought it was a real thing, because I mean, it looked very realistic. I mean, even though like when they take the knife to her and it puts like the line of red on, you can tell that it's obviously just like red paint or anything, right? But then when they were like sawing the legs, and then they bring out all the animal guts and stuff like that. You know, I mean, it looks very, very realistic. So I can see why people might think
that's the thing that heightens it in a way, is that weird, again, that jarring thing between, oh, that's oh, that looks, and then, oh, that just looks stupid, and then, oh, that's silly, and I'm laughing at it, but at the same time, that also makes it slightly disturbing that I'm laughing at that, and then just playing out with like the bit where the guy's forced to fillet like a deer hoof. That's like, what the fuck is this now? Like, for whatever reason, that's just really,
it was really disturbing and strange, and
it goes straight into something, right? In the because, so it's interesting how in that way it kind of shortcuts the tyranny of conscious thought, right? And so it is kind of weirdly
like it was properly creepy. Like, I thought all the use of the masks and stuff, that like there was some creepiness, and definitely like the darkness, and I could see how it would be really like mysterious, and especially if you have like the real life mystery run, it would be like, wow, what is this thing? Like I found something, like almost like it's like a little thing that you found, almost like back when it was on 42nd Street kind of thing. But being watched on your laptop in 2021, it was just sort of like okay.
I take your point there. That certainly. Apparently, Roger Watkins was high on crystal meth through the whole thing as well.
He reminded me of someone. I couldn't tell. Like, it was like Meatloaf or something. Like,
I think I might know what it reminded you of.
Who?
Because this film came to mind for me as I was thinking, hang on now, there's a weird kind of things.
Oh, okay, yeah. The weirdness of it.
The weirdness of it reminds me of things. The mullet and something about his whole and the weird voiceover stuff, and running around with a drill, and there's a weird kind of amount. I don't think the people who made things ever said they saw Last House on Dead Street. I think it's a complete coincidence, but there's something there, isn't there? There's some kind of connective tissue between the two.
But like, his face looks like someone else. I was trying to figure out, like, it's almost like he looks like Meatloaf or something. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't know. I just couldn't help thinking about Barry J. Gillis. Also, the other surprise thing as well is that the one mask someone wears seems straight out of Zardoz. There's stone head, but they were pre-Zardoz, this film, I think. It's like someone thrown away like a Zardoz promotional material, and someone found it in an alley, but I think it's pre-Zardoz, so I don't quite know what that is.
It's like this Greek statue thing.
There's also a poster I noticed this time, now that you can actually see it properly. There's a poster in one of my favorite film posters for a British film called Psychopath from 1966, and it's kind of a pre-Maniac kind of. It says, "Mother, may I go out to kill?"
Oh yeah, I saw that. Yeah, but I thought that was the title of the film. Mother, may I go out to kill?
It's called Psychopath. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Although that is a good title for a film.
Yeah.
And it
sounded like a real it sounded like one of those, like, I was a teenage zombie. Those type of like like schlocky, like exploitative titles.
So Roger Watkins also went on. He was most famous for, AKA Richard Marler, directing Pornography. Again, Pornography or a crossover. And in fact, we showed one of his films when we went to Osaka to show the short film that I directed, which you're in, Ron.
Okay.
Mr. Jim, when we screened it in Osaka, we also screened a bunch of other films, and one of the films was a Roger Watkins porno film, which Johannes, who's in the film with you, had a copy of. It was called Midnight Heat, and it was heroically depressing, I think I would describe it.
Really? Okay.
Everyone was sat there just kind of like without a hard-on, and just what a grim fucking porn film. Who what's the utility of this then? But kind of admirably so. When the film kind of finished, and it had a very subtle kind of twist ending, which made everything more grim, and you're just like, oh man, what a hard-on killer! Like, who the fuck was this film aimed at? So yeah, I think Roger Watkins seems to. I am keen to see some more of his porn now, actually, just to see if it was always this kind of grim. And he certainly had an aesthetic. I think
right.
he brought to his work. And I would recommend the commentary track. He's quite interesting to hear talk about Last House on Dead End Street. Yeah, I mean, not quite the essential item that Last House on the Left is.
Right. Yeah.
But I think for what it was trying to achieve, I think it's probably closer to what it was supposed to be than Last House on the Left was, maybe.
Yeah, well, I don't know that they really even know what they were trying to do with Last House on the Left. I think they were just trying to like throw everything in the kitchen sink in there, right? It's sort of like they're just trying to make whatever they could.
No, that's what I mean. This feels slightly more of a piece, even if this version of it is somewhat compromised from its original vision. It still seems like there's less. It's got weird, jarring bits, but it doesn't swing from one to the other. It feels more as if it coalesces into just kind of a weird a gumbo of
yeah, I think it's closer to a single vision, at least. Yes. Like, at least it's not what he wanted or what he was trying to do, but at least what he was going for, right? So
yes, and
whereas with Last House on the Left, they didn't even know what they were going for. So.
Right, yes. Whereas I would program Last House on Dead End Street on, let's say, a celebration of kind of very kind of weird, out there, low budget visions on film or something like that, nightmares on film. But I wouldn't put it on milestones of horror kind of. It's kind of a different. Yeah, but again, that's that's the putting things in categories thing that I tend to do, which maybe I shouldn't. But any more to say on Last House on Dead?
I think I'm out for this one. Yeah, I didn't have much about this one.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I found it slightly more interesting than you as well, but it's a film you have to experience more than can explain exactly.
Yes, yeah.
I have to admit the chapter,
much like Things.
Yeah, the chapter in Killing for Culture actually did. David Carrigas and Slater did do a pretty good job in that book of the chapter on the book does kind of convey it quite well, and it did make me want to see it because I hadn't seen it.
Okay, I'll check it out. I'll check out that part of the book then.
Yeah, well, it's a good. I think you'd get more because I think the slight with that, which is a brilliant book, Killing for Culture. I think the slight handicap for you is it's maybe a bit too much like it's all new,
right? Yes,
so you don't have a foothold. So
for the book, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. That's my problem when I started reading the book. It's just sort of like I don't know what any of the movies are referencing. It's like this movie is sort of like references this other movie, and I don't know what that other movie is either. So,
right. Well,
I don't know. Yeah.
Last House on Dead End Street comes fairly early. I think it's like the third chapter or something. So now that you've got a bit of a foothold, maybe you can.
Yeah. So now that I've seen some of these movies, it might be better to read the book now that I've seen some of the movies. So.
Yeah, and then you might want to watch some more of them, and then we can maybe put them together. Right. Anyway, so yes, so we are getting back in the car, but we are not leaving upstate New York. The next, I think it's at the double bill again. Actually, is some more upstate New York. So until then, I guess I'll find a piece of garage music from the area to stick in here. And me and Ron will get going. So until then.
Till next time, see you.
Here's your chance to shout, "Get out the way, you bloody hippie," one more time if you want, Ron.
Upstate New York hippie.
Bye.
See you.
It's been a good day. say